Okay, we've made the center of the flower, as you can see. Okay, and we're now going to move on and make the centermost part of the petals going around the edge. And I'm working with this original colorway, so I'm going to be using blush for this next part. And what we're going to do is we're going to be working trebles in this round, and that's UK terminology. So when we're working with trebles, our joining chains do actually count as the first stitch. So let me show you what I mean. I'm pulling up my loop as usual, and I'm going to make 1, 2 and 3 chain, and they are going to count as my first treble. All right, I'm going to move across to the next stitch. So I've got 1 treble there. I'm moving across to the next stitch and putting 3 into this one. Oops, that's 2 and this is 3. And then I'm moving across to the next one and putting 1 in there, 1 treble in there. All right, so if you look, what I've done is I've made a little sort of group of 5 trebles over 3 stitches. All right, that's our sort of repeat. And we're going to make 2 chain and skip the next stitch and then move on to the next one and repeat that little pattern. So 1 in the first one, 3 in the next one, 2 and 3, and 1 in the next one, and then 2 chain. Okay, so that's your repeat, not too tricky, and we're going to make that all the way around. So I'll do that and see you at the end. Okay, so I'm just finishing the last treble on the last repeat, and I'm going to make 2 chain, and I'm going to join into the top of that starting 3 chain to close the round. All right, there we are. So if you look, you can see we've made these little groupings all the way around, and we've made spaces in between them. Okay, so that was round 4. Okay, we are now up to making the in this case caramel coloured petals, which is round 5, and obviously you can use whatever you like, but in the original colourway, which is what I'm using there, caramel, and you will see this little frilly edge is achieved by making picot. Now if you've made some of the other motifs, you'll be fine with picot, but let's just run through it just as a refresher if you need it. Okay, we're going to start by joining our yarn into the first treble of any of these 5 treble groups, and we're going to go into the top and pull up a loop and secure with a chain, and that's not going to count as our first stitch because our first stitch here is a double, UK terminology, so we're going to go into the same stitch again and make that double crochet. All right, that's our first stitch. Coming along to the next stitch, we're going to make a half treble, and we're now going to make our first picot, and the way we make the picot, as a little refresher, is 3 chain, 1, 2 and 3, and then we take our hook and we go into the top of the stitch, the front leg of the stitch where the first chain came out of, and into the right leg of the stitch underneath it, and we're going to make a slip stitch to close that down and create that little bobble. Can you see that? Okay, so that's our first picot. Moving along to the next stitch, we're going to make 2 trebles. So what's also happening here is we are graduating the size of our stitches. They're gradually getting taller. And I've made 2 treble there, and I'm going to make another picot. So same again, it's 3 chain, 1, 2 and 3, and just bring my hook down to the front of where that first chain came out, put it through there and to the little leg behind it, and create a slip stitch, and that's our second picot, and you can see those little bubbles forming. I'm going to put a 3rd treble into the same stitch there, and then come across and make my half treble. You can see we're now coming back down in sizes of stitch, half treble into the next stitch over, and make another picot, 1, 2, 3 chain, and fasten it off at the base of that those chains with a slip stitch. Okay, and then finally on my last stitch of this group, I'm going to make 1 double crochet. So let's just quickly have a look at that. You can see it looks like a crown, doesn't it, at the moment? I've got the fibres all coming out of that yarn. Looks a bit like a crown, and it's lovely. And what we now need to do is move across to the next petal. And we also need to kind of finish this petal off. And the way that we're going to do that is by putting another couple of trebles into a next stitch over. But what we're going to do is we're not going to come into this space. We're actually going to go into the stitch that we slipped on this copper round, which was round 3. All right, and there's another little thing to note here. Let me show you the hook position. So we're doing trebles, so yarn around the hook first, and I'm going to go through that copper stitch, but I'm not going to make my stitch over the top of that chain space that's there already. Can you see my yarn is passing over the top of that chain space and catching that in, and I don't want to do that. What I actually want to do is just bend that chain space back, so all I'm actually using is the skipped copper stitch here. So you can see the chain space is absolutely bent back out of the way. My hook is going into the skipped stitch, the copper stitch here, and I'm making my treble. And if you look, you'll see, if I bend my work forward here, you'll see that that chain is completely left alone. It's not caught in any way. So I'm going to make a second one in the same space. And that is going to serve as outlining both this first and this second petal. Okay, so off we go again with our repeat. All right, so we're starting again with the one double crochet into the top of the first of that treble group, then a half treble into the next one with the picot at the top, so you know where you are now. We're going back through that repeat that we've just completed on the first petal. So I will continue round and make my petals, and we'll look at what they look like at the end. So what you've got to look for here is remember where to put your picots, and remember that when you work between the petals, you're not catching in that chain space. You need to leave that free for use later. All right, so there we go. I'll finish this round and show you what it should look like at the end. Okay, we're doing the last half treble and the last picot on this last petal. One last double crochet, and we are going to finish with the 2 treble in the skipped stitch. Okay. That's that, and we will close the round by slip stitching into the top of the very first double crochet that we made, and that will be that. Let's have a little look. I will snip that yarn in a minute. But there we go. That finishes the flower. All right, so that part of the sunflower motif is now complete. So from this point on, we are going to be making stems and leaves, and then finally the frame. All right, so the center part, the flower part, doesn't take too long and is really pretty. So let's move on and make some stems.